about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go. Let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to this first in a new series of live streams for A-Level Law. It's Jim here at Tutor HQ, and I'm joined tonight for our first session of this new school year, this new autumn term. By who we've got Gemma in the middle, which must mean it's Emily on the right. Good afternoon,
Hi.
sorry, good evening, ladies. I've lost track of time already today. We've been doing so many live streams. I'm going to pass over to Gemma and Emily in a few seconds to go through the session, which will last about half an hour. If you're watching live, welcome. You get the opportunity to use the live chat to submit your suggested answers. You may have done these kind of sessions with us before, so you'll know the score. If you haven't, you're particularly welcome to this new session for this term. If you're watching on catch up, and we know that literally hundreds, thousands of students watching catch up over the coming days and weeks, then you're just going to have a go yourself. Maybe pause the video rather than using the live chat and see how you get on compared with our live student audience tonight. Tonight's topic is we've picked a core topic from criminal law, which is diminished responsibility. And so I'm going to pass over to Gemma. Do you want to sort of lead us off on that and then get us straight into the first activity? I'm going to have a go at the questions as well, see how I can get on as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Yes, so as Jim said, want to see lots of comments actively participating in this and see how you're getting on with this topic of diminished responsibility. So after the core topic of murder, we then, most of us go on to teach diminished responsibility and loss of control, voluntary manslaughter topics. And that's what we're going to be focusing on here tonight, diminished responsibility. And next week, already there's a cracking session planned for or loss of control. But today, diminished responsibility, that's what we're going to be focusing on, looking at breaking it down and then doing some activities to see what you know about the partial defence.
Cool. Here we go. Have fun.
Okay, so starting off, type your answers, please. Just a quick starter thinking activity. What's the difference between murder and diminished responsibility? Type your comments in and let's see if we can get some answers in there. Anything that you can highlight as a difference between murder and diminished responsibility. What does it do? What's the maximum sentences for them? Are they different? Are they the same? What do you think? Give you a few seconds to type in the comment box. No, don't be shy. Come on there. Oh, we got some coming in now. Oh, I like some of the answers we're getting in already. So somebody's given us a definition of murder. So, of course, murder is coming from Lord Coke, and it's the definition of murder is unlawful killing of a reasonable creature in being under the Queen's peace with malice aforethought express or implied. And somebody's saying there that diminished responsibility is a defence to murder. Is it a full defence? Or is it a partial defence? What will happen if you are convicted of diminished responsibility? Will you get off? Or is it a partial defence and it will lower your sentence? Got some cracking answers coming in here, and really good that these students can define the difference between murder and diminished responsibility, because that is what is needed in the scenario questions, being able to pick out the difference between them. Brilliant. Loads of answers coming in now. Okay. Partial defence. Exactly. It is a partial defence. Okay. And it will lead to a possible lower sentence. So, of course, the sentence for murder is mandatory life sentence, whereas the sentence for diminished responsibility is discretionary life. So it gives the judge that discretion to give what sentence they think appropriate. Okay, so partial defence and reducing murder to voluntary manslaughter, where the maximum sentence is discretionary life imprisonment. Fantastic. So that kicked us off, and we've got lots of people commenting already. So I'm going to go through the elements of diminished responsibility. Now, diminished responsibility, can anybody just tell me where it comes from? What statute, what section maybe? I'm going to type in the chat box. We've got 4 elements to it, and we've got the abnormality of mental functioning, okay, which must come from a recognised medical condition. Now, the abnormality of mental functioning was defined in the case of Byrne by Lord Parker, and they defined it as a state of mind so different from that of an ordinary human being that the reasonable man would term it abnormal. So we have the abnormality of mental functioning, but it has to come from, as I said, this recognised medical condition. Now, this recognised medical condition is to be proven medically. Okay, and the jury will decide on the recognised medical conditions. We've got a variety of recognised medical conditions which are included here. There's depression, postnatal depression, battered wife syndrome, a vast array of them, and we'll come on to some activities looking at them later on. This then abnormality of mental functioning from a recognised medical condition must cause a substantial impairment, okay? And it must cause a substantial impairment that the defendant cannot understand the nature of their conduct, or they can't form a rational judgment, or they can't exercise self-control. Now, I did take care there when I said or. They only have to show one of those substantial impairments. Now, sometimes you will be able to show more than one, and that's okay, but only one is necessary. And of course, as was stated in the case of Golds, that impairment must be important or weighty. And then all this, the abnormality of mental functioning from the recognised medical condition which causes this substantial impairment, explains the defendant's act or indeed their omission in killing, because remember, we can have murder by act or omission. So I did say, where is all this contained though? Where have I got this from? Can anybody type in the chat box which statute is this from, or which section is this from? Does anybody know? Because, of course, murder is not in a statute, is it? That's just this definition from Lord Coke. But this is, of course, well done there. Somebody's commented. It is in section 52 of the Commoners and Justice Act of 2009. Well done. So that's the key 4 elements of diminished responsibility there. Okay, so let's kick off with our activities. So first of all, we're starting with the big reveal. So what happens with this is you've got to work out what's hidden behind the question mark before all of the clues are revealed. It's a case, okay? So which case? So type in the chat box. Let's reveal number 1. So this case was heard in 1960. Can we think of any cases that might have been heard in the 60s? Bit to go for some of us, okay? Soon as you think of any answers, type it in the chat box. Okay, let's go for number 2. And a bit more help. Just heard in 1960. This was where the appellant murdered and mutilated a girl in a hostel who was stopping there. So any diminished responsibility cases we can think on like that. Oh, we're getting some answers in already after 2. Oh, we're getting, let's go for number 3. So the appellant here, he said he was suffering from irresistible sexual impulses. Is that making anybody remember any cases? Okay, we're getting some answers in. If anybody agrees or disagrees, put your own answer in. The defence of diminished responsibility was successful in this case, and murder was reduced to voluntary manslaughter. Okay, so it did succeed, and it was one of the key cases on diminished responsibility. Hold on, let's see if we can get any more answers in there. Before we go to number 5, I think we might get it off number 5. Lord Parker. It should be Lord Parker, not Lord Parked. Lord Parker defined abnormality of mental functioning as so different from the ordinary human being that it would be deemed it to be abnormal. A reasonable man would deem it to abnormal. So, type in what case defined the abnormality of mental functioning test. We'll get that quote from, so different from the ordinary human being that the reasonable man would deem it abnormal. Any more answers in there? We're getting more in. Wow. I think I've seen one of my students answer that correctly as well. So that's obviously shows that I'm teaching them right there. That's fantastic. It is, of course, burn. Well done. Give yourselves a round of applause there. Fantastic. We've got Joe, Sass and Madison all getting that correct. Fantastic, guys. Right, okay. Let's go on to the next activity. Right, 30-second challenge. Okay, I love this. Put you under pressure, guys. Okay, so you've got 30 seconds to answer the question on screen. Type it in the chat box. So it's a bit of a quick typing exercise here. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. So, how many diminished responsibility cases can you remember? Write your cases in the chat box. If you can, write the case name and the topic. Okay, let's get going on this. Okay, Let's see. Give you a couple more seconds just to type in there, because I know it's it can be a bit quick, that, can't it? And we need a bit of time to actually type. Oh, we've got some coming through. Right, okay, let's have a look at some of these cases there. How many did you remember? Do you recognise any of the others from the chat? So, of course, we've got burn in there. Okay, we've gone through that. We've got golds. Yes, we've got golds in there. So that was talking about the impairment must be important or weighty. Yes, talking about that substantial impairment. We've got, somebody said there, Reynolds. Reynolds, of course, is the recognised medical condition for postnatal depression. Somebody's on a roll there, aren't they? They've got burn, they've got Sears, which is depression. We've got Alawalia, which is, of course, the recognised medical condition of battered wives syndrome, when Mrs. Alawalia set fire to her husband, in that case. We've got Deichmann. That's a good one there. Deichmann. That's talking about intoxication in relation to diminished responsibility, and saying that when somebody suffers from a recognised medical condition but is also intoxicated, what the jury should do is they should ignore the intoxication and just decide on the substantial impairment coming from the recognised medical condition. Wow, we've got loads here, guys. I'm so impressed. We've got Woods as well, which is in there, which is another case on alcohol, but that's saying that alcohol dependency syndrome can be a recognised medical condition in itself. That is absolutely fantastic, guys. I am immensely impressed with that. Wow. And they just keep coming. We just keep coming. They can't stop. Right, okay, you're going to have to stop, guys, now, because I'm handing over to Emily, who is going to take you through this activity on Give Me 4.
Thanks very much, Gemma. So following on from that, we are going to look at what amounts to a recognised medical condition. So what I'd like you to do is aim to recall 4 examples of recognised medical conditions. You're going to have 30 seconds, and then we'll go through the answers with cases to illustrate each one. So what recognised medical conditions can you recall? Remember, you're aiming for 4, ideally. Type those, thank you for the funky music, type those into the chat when you recall them. Excellent. Yes, oh gosh, we've got loads, well done. Brilliant, yep. Yep. People are absolutely on a roll here. This is fantastic. Well done. Okay. Yes, we've got depression, epilepsy, personality disorder, schizophrenia. That is a difficult one to spell. Borderline personality disorder, anxiety. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you very much for moving on to the next slide. So we're going to look at 4 in particular, although these are not the only ones, of course. Oh gosh, we've got loads coming through in the chat. Well done, everyone. Wow. Battered wife syndrome, now known as battered spouse syndrome, to be more inclusive. Yes, psychopathy. Fantastic. Well done. Brilliant. Well done, everyone. Okay, so starting off with sexual psychopathy. Our key case here would be burn, which was one of the cases that was mentioned previously. This is not only useful to remember as an example to illustrate sexual psychopathy, but also, as Gemma mentioned prior to this, it's also the key case that you use to define abnormality of mental functioning. That state of mind so different from that of the ordinary person that the ordinary person would deem it to be abnormal. In this case, again, as was mentioned previously, not a very nice case, not that many of the criminal cases are. The defendant had murdered a 19-year-old woman in a hostel and mutilated her body. He claimed to be suffering from irresistible urges or irresistible impulses that couldn't be controlled. His defense was successful because of his psychopathy. Battered spouse syndrome was previously known as battered woman syndrome. In this case, in the case of Thornton and also Alawalia, the defendants were initially convicted of murder. However, were able to rely on the defense of diminished responsibility after the defense changed. were able to successfully have their convictions reduced from that of murder to voluntary manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Both women had killed abusive husbands, and then, like I say, were able to use the defence of diminished responsibility on their appeal. If you need to use depression, you can use the case of either Gittins or Sears. Both cases are cases whereby the defence was successful. In Gittins, which is the case that I find my students prefer to recall, the defendant had murdered both his wife and his daughter with a hammer. Again, not a very nice case. But as I say, the defence of diminished responsibility was successful because of his depression, which was classed as a recognised medical condition. Following on from that, we have alcohol dependency syndrome. There are lots of key cases to recall here, specifically Stewart, Wood and Tandy. In Stewart, the Court of Appeal set out the three-part test for the requirement of alcohol dependency syndrome being able to be used. The first requirement is to ask whether the defendant was suffering from an abnormality of mental functioning. Secondly, was that then caused by the alcohol dependency syndrome? And finally, did that impair the defendant's mental responsibility? If you find that the defendant has some sort of brain injury as a result of long-term alcohol abuse, Wood would probably be a more appropriate case. Alternatively, Tandy is another one who experienced alcohol dependency syndrome. In that case, the defendant had drunk a litre bottle of vodka and then killed her 11-year-old daughter by strangulation. All right. Now, some exam gold. It's really important that you know the difference between the three offences of murder, voluntary manslaughter, and involuntary manslaughter. Murder, as was mentioned previously, was defined by Sir Edward Coke. This is an unlawful killing that is committed under the Queen's Peace. It's done with malice aforethought, and it's either done with the intention to kill or the intention to commit GBH, so express or implied. The mens rea also has to occur before the actus reus, so that's the aforethought part, and this is a common law offence, unlike voluntary manslaughter, which is defined in statute. So voluntary manslaughter is one step down from murder. Basically, you can use the defences of diminished responsibility, loss of control, or sometimes both, and have your conviction, if successful, moved from murder to that of voluntary manslaughter. It also means that the defendant would have their conviction, not only have their conviction reduced, but also avoid that mandatory life sentence as well. If a person gets convicted of voluntary manslaughter, they would instead be given up to life imprisonment. Involuntary manslaughter, on the other hand, is whereby the defendant doesn't demonstrate the mens rea for murder at all, so they don't intend death or GBH, and this is committed via gross negligence or unlawful act manslaughter. And as I mentioned, diminished responsibility comes under Section 2 of the Homicide Act 1957. That's now been amended by Section 52 of the Coroners and Justice Act 2009. I would always just start by mentioning this, and then it's out of the way with, you've got your Acts of Parliament in there, you've ticked a box, and the examiner's happy. Now we're going to move on to some true or false statements. As you can see, you've got Statement 1 and Statement 2 on the screen. Read them both, and then decide which of the answers is correct out of A, B, C, or D. So you need to decide whether Statement 1 is correct or false, whether Statement 2 is correct or false, and then based on that, tell me which of the letters you think corresponds to the correct answer, and pop your answer into the chat. A, B, C, or D. Off you go. So what do we think? Do we think Statement 1 and 2 are correct? Do we think just one of them is correct? Or do we think both of them are false? That's also an option. So A, B, C, or D. I'm trying to refrain from saying, please vote now. Okay, everybody seems to be going for, yes, cheer to you. Yes, I think I'd go with the students at this point. Yes, well done. Can we get the answer up? Well done. Everybody said A, and everybody is correct. Well done. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Let's move on to number 2. So, statement 1, diminished responsibility is a full defence to murder, or statement 2, diminished responsibility is a partial defence to murder. Obviously, in this case, only one of these answers is going to be correct. Tell me which one you think. Yes, Stuart, I would be copying the students right now as well. They seem to be doing a fantastic job. So tell me in the chat which of the two statements you think is correct by typing in A, B, C, or D. Oh, we actually have a little bit of a difference of opinion here. But we do have the majority going for C, okay. Just wait a few more seconds, let everybody have a chance to pop their answers into the chat. I feel like Tutor, you were just copying the students here. Okay, can we have the answer up? Thank you very much. Yes, of course. Number 2 is correct. Diminished responsibility is just a partial defence to murder. If a defendant is successful in using diminished responsibility, they will not get away with murder. It's not a full defence. They will have their conviction reduced simply from murder to voluntary manslaughter. But again, they can still be convicted of a crime, obviously, but they also could be sentenced to up to life imprisonment. It just means that they avoid the mandatory life sentence. Let's move on to the third one. Okay, again, you have two statements. The first one is the defence must prove on the balance of probabilities that diminished responsibility is shown. Statement 2 is it is for the judge to decide if diminished responsibility is shown, as it will affect their sentencing. So which of those statements do you think is correct? And tell me which one you think is correct out of A, B, C, or D. Oh, people are a bit more hesitant with this one. All right, we've got one person saying B. Let's see what everybody else thinks. All right, a little bit more of a consensus now. Oh. Yes, it is a tough one, I agree. Non-law student here. Wow. Just doing this for fun. Wild Tuesday nighter. All right. I think as many people as feel confident answering have gone for it, so let's get the answer up. All right, congratulations if you said B, which was most people. Well done, well done. All right, fantastic. Let's move on to the fourth statement. This is the second last one. All right, well done, everyone. So statement 1, the judge will decide if a recognised medical condition is shown. And statement 2, the British Medical Association classification of diseases may be consulted in deciding a recognised medical condition. Okay, what do we think about this one? A, B, C, or D? Okay, I've got a couple of people going for C. I won't say whether that's correct or not just yet. Good memory. Yes, well done. Okay, yes, well done. All right. So it was mentioned previously that medical evidence, thank you for the answer there. It was mentioned previously that medical evidence needs to be proven in order for a defendant to be able to rely on the defence. That was stated in Matheson, which is another very handy key case for you to recall, specifically to illustrate that principle. Well done to those of you who stated D. All right, which is actually a minority. Okay, let's move on to the fifth and final statement of the true or false round. So, statement 1, and pay attention to the wording of this. Mental ability is impaired if someone cannot understand the nature of their conduct or form rational judgment or exercise self-control. Statement 2 reads, mental ability is impaired if someone cannot understand the nature of their conduct and form rational judgment and exercise self-control. Okay. Read carefully and then tell me whether you think the answer is A, B, C, or D. People changing their minds here. Yeah, sometimes you need to read it a couple of times. Okay, not quite got a consensus yet. Let's wait a few more seconds. Still people changing their minds. That's fine. This is why your teachers always tell you to read the question twice. Okay, well done. All right, let's get the answer up there. Well done for those of you who said B, well, which was quite a few of you. So well done. Yes, only one of those things needs to be substantially impaired, not all three of them. So yes, earlier on, Gemma did mention that the word that you need to use is or in between those three things, not and. Only one of those needs to be substantially impaired, not all of them. All right, well done. I'm going to pass back over to Gemma now to do this activity.
Okay, so this is our last activity. The engagement so far has been absolutely fantastic from all of you. So let's finish on a flourish. So which of these words or cases linked to diminished responsibility? Type them in the chat box. Which of those words, cases are in relation to diminished responsibility? Type them in. So if, for example, you think golds is in relation to diminished responsibility, type golds in the chat box and let's see how many we get. Getting some coming in. Fantastic. So somebody's already mentioned there, yes, Section 52, the Commonwealth and Justice Act, that's been mentioned a couple of times. That's where the definition of diminished responsibility comes from. We've spoken about the case of Wood, which gives us the recognised medical condition of alcohol dependency syndrome. We've got in there, they're coming so thick and fast here, everybody. You're on fire, guys. We've got Sears, yes, that's in relation to chronic depression. We've got also Deichmann. Of course, we have mentioned that. I talked to you about that in relation to intoxication. And we disregard the intoxication and just look at the recognised medical condition, which therefore, of course, means that the recognised medical condition is also correct. Okay, and we've got the substantial impairment there as well. Brilliant. You can see you've just been on fire, guys. All those and Lord Parker. Now, an extra question. I'm going to shoehorn this one in there. All those that are left in white then, that are not words or cases linked to diminished responsibility, what are all those in white related to? It's a bit of extra challenge there. What are all those in white in relation to? I think you've got it. I think you've got it, guys, haven't you? Okay. Right, loss of control, absolutely loss of control, which is what the session will be on next week. So thank you, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed making this presentation, thoroughly enjoyed your engagement with it. It was fantastic.
That was half an hour of law gold, exactly half an hour as well. Perfect timing. So fantastic. I've just been, whilst I was listening very carefully as I proved in my answers, Emily picked up on that, but I've just gone back over the elements of proving diminished responsibility, and I've now concluded that I can't use that defence for failing to do the dishes at home, which is what I was hoping to use when I get back tonight. So maybe loss of control will be an option for me after next week's session. It's a fantastic. There's some of those cases are gruesome, aren't they? I mean, how do
you don't get many nice cases in criminal law.
What was that one about the husband who was set on fire? Which one was that?
Alawalia. Yeah. But the students remember it. Yeah, the students do remember it, don't they? So yeah, sure. It's very interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's like Torse, isn't it? Some of the cases you just can't help not remember. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And in a couple of weeks, there's some talk sessions, isn't there, Jim?
There are. Yeah. Well, what we've done is we've lined up the first 5 sessions.
Topics.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm just looking on tutordu.net/live. If you go to that link, I think we've lined up the first 5 sessions for tonight, obviously, and then 4 more before half term. And I think we're then polling lots of law teachers to say, well, which sessions would you like us to do after half term, particularly as we start to approach some sort of end of term assessments and maybe even some mock exams for those taking A-levels in summer 2022. So keep an eye out on that. By subscribing to the YouTube channel, you get an alert as soon as we get those sessions lined up. So you'll be able to spot those. And of course, if you're doing some other subjects as well, other A-levels, other subjects, take a look at all the subjects. We've just done geography and business tonight. Psychology starts next week. Sociology starts tomorrow night. We've got politics, history, economics on the way as well this week. So take a look at those. Might be useful for you. And as always, we ask if you found the session useful, and it's always a huge thanks to Gemma and Emily for putting it together and for presenting it so well. Give it a like, make them feel happy as they go off to do some marking or something else. Many thanks for joining us live. If you're watching on catch up, hopefully you found it useful as well. And well, it's a regular start, isn't it? It's going to be 6:30 on a Tuesday night for our law study live streams. The team will change here and there between the sessions, but they'll all become very familiar faces. So we look forward to catching you on the next one. So from all 3 of us, huge thanks and see you later.
Thanks.
Well
Bye.
done, everyone. Bye.